Thank you, Mr. Zayas. It's clear to all of us that, according to the legal aspect of the matter, of the subject of the genocide, it's a matter of enforcement rather than legislation. It's a political issue that needs to be solved.
The audience must be exhausted. I would say.
Μόνο μία ερώτηση, επειδή είμαι σε ένα νομικό τμήμα, θα κάνω τον δικαστή. I will act like a judge. Οπότε θα επιτρέψω μόνο μία ερώτηση, τον κύριο Μηχανεζίδη. Εγώ αποφασίζω. Με συγχωρείτε, όσο αντιδημοκρατικό και να ακούγεται, είναι δική μου απόφαση για την... να διευκολύνουμε τις ομιλητές.
No, I have no comments and no questions. A great thank you for this magnificent conference to Professor Dr. Zayas. We're really bewildered and grateful and thankful for that magnificent conference, Professor. Thank you very much.
Να επιτρέψουμε και μία ερώτηση. Και μία και στην κυρία από εδώ.
Thank you both speakers, but thank you the second one especially because as a Cypriot that's a daughter and the granddaughter of a forced displaced person, I totally understand what you said and the problems. And I would like to say a fear and ask your opinion. Do you think that maybe a new agreement of Lausanne is coming for Cyprus? A new agreement that is going to establish illegal acts, that after that there's going to be a born of a new state, if there is this fear. Thank you.
I can just that one quickly. Pursuant to Article 96 of the United Nations Charter, the General Assembly, the Security Council, and some specialized agencies can elevate a legal question to the International Court of Justice for what is called an advisory opinion. Now, we have advisory opinions on the case of Western Sahara. We have advisory opinions on the legal consequences of the continued occupation of Namibia by South Africa. We have advisory opinions on the meaning of the unilateral declaration of independence of Kosovo. It is useful to have an advisory opinion. Not that the advisory opinion per se is going to change matters. It is not self-executing. On the other hand, if you define the parameters and you have all the aspects why the Treaty of Lausanne is today incompatible with the entire body of post-World War II international law, it's obvious that the consequence is that the provisions of this treaty cannot be allowed to hold. That the whole philosophy behind the Treaty of Lausanne, the whole issue of impunity, and the failure to make any reparation, as was foreseen in Article 144 of the Treaty of Sèvres, or any investigations as foreseen in Article 230 of the Treaty of Sèvres. I would like to see a discussion how to come back to the Treaty of Sèvres. After all, the only reason why the Treaty of Sèvres was never implemented is that you had a coup d'etat, that the Ottoman Empire that had bound itself, had signed the Treaty of Sèvres, was overthrown by an ambitious general, and he waged war. The British and the French didn't have the mettle to fight them back. And they said, it's not worth it for us, so they pulled back and they left the Greeks out on the lurch. So the Greeks were then wiped out by the Turks without the necessary, or shall we say the ethical support and solidarity of the British and the French. Now imagine, per analogiam, if Germany had said, we're not going to implement the Treaty of Versailles, or the Austrians had said, we're not going to implement the Treaty of Saint-Germain. Only Turkey got away with completely violating all of the provisions of the Treaty of Sèvres. So I think the very origin of the Treaty of Lausanne is vitiated. That's why I use the term contra bonus mores, the term contra legem. It emerged out of an act of aggression that Kemal Atatürk conducted against the Allies, and in particular against the Greeks, including the genocide of the Greeks. So one avenue, as I said, let's try an advisory opinion of the ICJ. In order to get that, of course, you have to create an interest. You have to convince a certain number of states that should do that. And I think that Turkey has lost a tremendous number of friends since the so-called coup d'etat of July 2016. Turkey has become one of the most despotic countries in the world, has the record for the number of journalists behind bars, the record for the number of judges dismissed, the number of professors and teachers dismissed, the number of, the complete state of terror that has become the daily fare of the Turkish people. So having said that, there's little sympathy for Turkey today. I could imagine that any number of states would be willing to table a resolution in the General Assembly elevating these issues of the Treaty of Lausanne to the International Court of Justice for an advisory opinion. That would be one step in trying to get this miserable situation corrected.
Mr. Γιαταγαντζίδης wants to...
I would like just a very brief comment on the Treaty of Lausanne. It's not so obvious for the Greek interests actually in that convergence that we live at that period to start discussing with Turkey about a reform on this issue. There are dangerous aspects, and we should study very carefully this perspective. This perspective, it's not so obvious, although it is bonus mores, against bonus mores, as you said. I understand it, and I agree with you on that point. But you know better than anyone in this hall that all the international treaties are a result of power. So I would be a little bit reserved on that matter, and that's why otherwise Erdogan is the first that asks the revision of this treaty. That's the small comment I want to do. Thank you.
Υπάρχει κάποια άλλη ερώτηση? Είναι κάποιος που θέλει να ρωτήσει κάτι?
Let me think, just take one more, but it's late.
If you want to answer to what they're asking.
Well, it's a question of the level of caution or the level of prudence that you want to exercise. I think sometimes it's necessary to be bold. Sometimes it's necessary to say things that shock you at first sight. But after you have survived the initial shock, I think you start realizing that this treaty is an aberration and that this treaty requires major revision. And I don't see Turkey benefiting at all from a revision of the treaty, quite the contrary. I mean, once the genocidal aspects of the treaty, the impunity and everything that went with it, become generally public, it is clear that it is not compatible with modern international law. And that kind of a treaty, there's no way in the world that you could impose that kind of a treaty today in the light of the United Nations Charter. So at least getting the discussion going on the illegality of this, or the illegitimacy of this treaty, might wake people up to the reality of the genocide against the Greeks and to the necessity to have satisfaction, to have reparation, and to have rehabilitation.
Νομίζω ότι απαντήθηκαν οι ερωτήσεις σας. Έχει περάσει και η ημέρα ευχάριστα, επικοδομητικά, αλλά με αρκετή κούραση. Να ευχαριστήσουμε τους ομιλητές μας για τις εξαιρετικές τους τοποθετήσεις και ανανεώνουμε το ραντεβού μας για αύριο το πρωί με ακόμα περισσότερο ενδιαφέρουσες εισηγήσεις.